especially because people feel that the government isn't being super transparent about this.
This is not just about security. It's about unchecked government overreach. It's about capitalizing on fear and media-driven hysteria to jam through sweeping legislation that could violate the civil liberties of American people.
Today, I came to party.
We have new intel and new specifics about why these drones could be here. This involves some insider trading with, Rand Paul is calling out the government possibly for inventing an emergency to overstep their powers and expand their powers, I should say. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. This is where the happy patriots are. We don't do conspiracies here, but man, we admit that there are drones in the sky. We admit that our government does not know, it seems, much about them. Let's watch this from a drone expert.
A lot of my constituents are seeing a lot of things floating up that they haven't seen before, and the government is essentially saying nothing to see here.
Yeah, I think I would phrase that a little different. I don't think there's, they're not saying there's nothing to see here. If you carefully read the way they're saying that, they're saying we have no reason to believe that they're up to no good. That doesn't mean that somebody out there isn't up to no good, but they're never going to say we're 100% positive because no one can tell you that. And unfortunately, the airspace in our country is not as well monitored as it might be.
Okay, so I agree with them. I've seen that where they word it very carefully. We have no reason to think they're any kind of a threat, let's say, which is the same thing that they said about the Chinese spy balloon, that big balloon that went over America. They're like, we don't see a reason why we have to shoot it down, until they had overwhelming public pressure to shoot it down. So they see mere spying, if it was coming from another country, let's say. I don't know that they are coming from another country. I'm only saying they would give you that same answer of we don't see them as an immediate threat just because they were here taking pictures of our bases and our neighborhoods, if that makes sense.
And some of this is traced back to laws that are hanging over long before drones were a thing. So, examples are that a little, 250-gram drone you buy online at Amazon and fly around for fun, under the law is an aircraft just like that 747 full of hundreds of passengers. And, if you interfere with the operator, it's the same as interfering with the pilot of that airliner. If you try to shoot it down under the law, it's the same thing. And then there's the whole problem of understanding what's up there in the first place. And that gets to, what are you going to do with? These things are tiny for the most part. Radar doesn't see them unless you get very specialized radars, and those are very short range. So the ones that you're hearing about coming up on these systems to New Jersey and New York, they're only going to have maybe, 5-6 miles of range. That's not a lot. The other means of tracking these, then there are a number of them, acoustic, electronic, and others. They're all also typically short range, and some are frankly prohibited because of other laws around things that don't seem to make sense, but they are, like wiretapping, computer hacking, and other things. So these laws need to be updated, and Congress needs to move on that. And they've been there have been laws pending in Congress for years now, and they just haven't done it.
Well, chalk this one up to Congress's inability to pass a law or straighten it out, because we're going to get to the end when Rand Paul is dealing with a law that the government is proposing that he's shooting down. He's saying absolutely not. But this goes into the radar thing on why they wouldn't show up on our radar. It's not just because they're spooky or weird. It's just because they're so dang small that you can't track things that small. In the picture of that guy, behind him are the drones that he rents out and regularly uses, say for the fire department, to go and fly over forests, and they look for fires with drones often. They don't show up on radar because they're so small, and the radar, they have to get really close to a radar source for it to pick them up because they're so small. Here's Rand Paul on the floor of addressing a brand new drone bill that Chuck Schumer liked a lot, and Rand Paul does not like it. And I think you can guess why if you know anything about his opposition to the Patriot Act back in the 2000s. He does not like the government expanding its powers just because some new emergency came up. And he has a good point.
The bill before us would grant law enforcement significant authority to intercept private electronic communications without consent. For example, the bill would allow the government to conduct dragnet surveillance of the phones innocent Americans traveling through U.S. airports as long as the government claims they are doing it to neutralize a drone. So in order to look at the information that might be coming to a drone, it may be that you capture all the information of everybody surrounding an airport or everybody who lives near an airport. Once you have all that data, what are the assurances that the government isn't looking at your data in addition to the data that may be related to flying the drone?
So that's a very good point. And we saw them scoop up massive phone numbers on J6. They grabbed everyone's phone information anywhere around. They just went to the phone operators, and the phone companies just gave them the information carte blanche without really putting up any kind of resistance. Not only that, but they asked for banking information of the people's phones around J6. And most of the banks coughed up voluntarily without any resistance to protect their customers all of the banking information of the people around J6. That was a huge scandal also. So now you have the government trying to pass it around drones, where they could just take a picture of everyone's cell phone data around an airport where there was a drone threat. And now you have the government once again collecting private citizens' data en masse. And as Rand Paul said, there's no obligation in this bill to know what they do with that data after they've made, say, their investigation. Do they keep it forever? Do they hold it forever? That is a violation of our privacy.
Especially because people feel that the government isn't being super transparent about this. Everything from, hey, these could be aliens to maybe something a little more sinister, like this could be a foreign adversary.
Yeah.
Are there any theories that, as the expert, you can debunk?
Well, I can't debunk any of those, but I can certainly say to me, they don't hang together logically. First of all, as far as these drones have very short ranges, we're talking 30, 40 minutes of flight time, for most drones, up to around 55 pounds, which is going to be almost every one of them, or almost all of them in the US. Another is, where are they going to be coming from? That if that's going to be it, they certainly aren't coming from ships offshore and that kind of thing, right? There certainly have been cases recently, national security related cases, where you had people flying drones to take photographs of military installations, and there have been arrests made. This stuff is not ignored. Just you gotta catch somebody in the act to address it.
So we can't catch people in the act. He just said they're not coming from a ship offshore, which I guess I would think if there was a ship offshore, we would know about it and we would take a picture of it. So if it's not being revealed to the public, one of our ships, then we don't want that information to get out. But I still think privately people would be able to find a ship that was 30 to 40 minutes offshore if the drones had a 30 to 40 minute flight time, right? That would be 20 minutes each way, 20 minutes away from a ship, 20 minutes to come back. So that would tell us that it's probably coming from the land. It can't come from a drone flying mothership because they have to return, and the drones don't go fast enough to have them in flight, get back into a plane. I'm assuming. So they probably are coming from a land truck, airport. Can't be a foreign adversary because we would be able to track them too. I still think it's our own government, but I'd love to see the proof for why it would be a foreign adversary still. They don't look like, they follow our flight rules. They do. They have the little blinking lights and everything.
And if these have such a short range of 30 to 40 minutes of battery life in flight, is there any indication of where they're landing?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. So there is a technology called remote identification. It's been mandated on all drones since September of 2022, new drones sold in the US. And with the right equipment, and an app on your phone is potentially the right equipment, you can look up there, see a drone, and you can know how high is it, how far is it, how fast is it going, what direction is it going, where did it take off from, and even exactly where is that operator on the ground right at this moment. That's called remote ID.
So that's civilian technology where we can have an app that allows us to see a drone, point it back to its driver. I've done drones myself, flown them around, took video footage. I read all the rules on it about staying out of flight paths, not going up so high that it could impede an airplane's flight or I'd get busted. But here's Rand Paul on what could be the end game. What now? I don't want to do conspiracies, guys, but what if our government sent up drones so they could pass a bill that allowed them to collect all the data, which Rand Paul said they'd be capable of doing if they could just pass this bill, scoop up all of the phone data around? Wouldn't that be justified enough for our government to send up drones and not give an explanation for them and just go, we're going to pass this bill?
This is not just about security. It's about unchecked government overreach. It's about capitalizing on fear and media-driven hysteria to jam through sweeping legislation that could violate the civil liberties of American people. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check on the executive power, not as a rubber stamp for it. The federal government already has the power to deal with drones. The federal government already has the power to stop any drones that are in airspace around airports. The federal government already has the power to protect its air bases. So if there is a significant problem here, the Biden administration needs to come forward and let us know, who are these drones? Who's operating these drones? What is the federal government doing to protect either airports or bases from this? Instead, we are told by the Biden administration there is no threat to our national security. So let's first insist on truth and transparency from the Biden administration before offering up legislation that is feel good, pat somebody on the back and say, oh, we've done something about drones. We are strong on drones.
One thing I like about Rand Paul is that he's always afraid of our government more than China or aliens. I love it. Here's a Chuck Schumer tweet. Amid these drone sightings, this week I will move for the Senate to pass legislation giving local officials the tools and authorities necessary to act quickly and in lockstep with government agencies. Then here's the vote Republican guy. Isn't it convenient that there's always a bill ready to be passed to take advantage of any, quote, random wink wink situation, unquote? I'll just leave it at that. You guys tell me in the comments below, are these drones coming from us? I'm Doug in Exile.